Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me. Today, we will be discussing voluntary attrition from the armed forces, potential causes of attrition, and solutions for retention. Between the years of 2010 and 2015, over 40% of military members that left service did so voluntarily, with each service member costing the military an average of $75,000 to recruit and train. The military spent over $6 billion to train replacements for military members that left service in 2015 alone. While the military does not track reasons for voluntary separation, interviews with military members and veterans suggest that poor work-life balance, lack of trust in leadership, and low monetary benefits are contributions to attrition. This attrition impacts a command or unit's ability to be mission ready, as well as costing the Department of Defense billions of dollars every year. While military life is not always a good fit for an individual, meaning that the military will always have voluntary attrition, the Department of Defense can do more to encourage retention. In the past, the Department of Defense has used a system of monetary incentives to encourage individuals to re-enlist in a particular field for an additional 4 to 6 years. The amount of funding for these monetary incentives, or re-enlistment bonuses, has steadily decreased from 2010 through 2015, while voluntary attrition didn't follow any kind of pattern. In fact, voluntary attrition was at its lowest during those 5 years. At the same time, spending on monetary incentives was also at its lowest. This data suggests that other factors play a more important role in a military member's decision to remain in service than whether or not he receives a re-enlistment bonus. In order to find a viable solution to military retention, the Department of Defense must consider its own unique needs. A solution must be flexible enough to be used across all branches of service, yet rigid enough to meet a set standard. The program must be respectful to the culture and time-honored traditions of the different branches, but modern enough to give control to junior personnel. This program also needs to be reasonably costed in order to prevent further budgetary constraints, and must also allow for a quick implementation. Now, employee retention is an issue faced by more organizations than just the military. Several large companies have implemented different strategies to retain their best and their brightest. Of 5 potential solutions researched that have had an impact on employee retention in corporations, 3 showed the potential to work with the military. The first of those 3 is work-life balance. This solution was employed by Avarto System Malaysia, and it dropped voluntary attrition from 32% to 9%. The second potential solution is an appreciation or recognition program. This is actually employed by several Fortune 500 companies, such as NetApp, who has a voluntary turnover of 5%. The final viable solution would be a revamped or a different monetary benefits program. Costco enjoys a 5% voluntary turnover by paying its employees well above the national average. Of these 3 potential solutions, the command-based recognition program fits best with the military's necessary criteria. In order to implement a successful recognition program, training at a command level involving leadership from non-commissioned officers all the way up to the commanding officer must be conducted. all stakeholders should be involved in the planning process to ensure success at a command level, as different commands and branches will have different needs. This program allows for large stakeholder buy-in by allowing those lower in the chain of command to have a say in this program. This strategy could be implemented for a relatively small budget, as commands could send representatives to an out-of-command training, and then those representatives could return and conduct the same trainings inside that command. This would also be easier to implement, as it gives commands the ability to operate in-house, meaning effective recognition programs could be put into place and adjusted based on the needs of that particular command. Because, let's face it, what works for a unit deployed in Afghanistan is not going to work for a naval vessel going through INSERV and San Diego. This program also allows for a quicker implementation with a projected time estimate at 1 to 2 years. In order to gauge the impact the recognition program has on a command or a base, a survey should be conducted at 6 and 12 months after implementation to determine the perceived effectiveness of this program by all stakeholders. Based on those surveys, the program could be changed as needed. After the 12-month mark, all quality of life surveys conducted at a command or base level will be compared to surveys prior to the implementation of the recognition program. An effective program will raise that member quality of life rating by 20%. The final way to measure the success of this solution would be to lower the number of voluntary separations military-wide by 25%. Because after all, the whole goal is to lower military attrition. Thank you all for your time. Have a wonderful day.